Luke had spent most of his life riding across the wide lands of Arizona. He was young, strong, and quiet by nature, and he liked to do his work without disturbing anyone. His ranch sat near the rocky canyons, where the wind carried dust from the red cliffs, and the long grass moved like waves. Every morning, he woke before the sun, fed his horses, checked the fences, and made sure the cattle were safe. It was a simple life, but it was good enough for him. That day began like any other. But something felt different as he saddled his bay horse. His missing mare, a gentle horse named Star, had broken the rope and wandered off the day before. Luke cared for all his animals, but Star was special to him. She had been born on the ranch, and he had raised her from a foal. He could not rest until he found her. So he packed water, checked his rifle for snakes or coyotes, and rode toward the canyon where tracks had last been seen. The morning sun spread golden light over the land, warming the rocks and revealing deep shadows in the narrow cuts between the cliffs. Luke guided his horse carefully, studying the ground for signs. He saw hoofprints now and then, but they were faint. More importantly, he noticed something else: small footprints. They were light, small, and thin. Not like a cowboy's boot. They looked like the footprints of a child walking barefoot or with soft moccasins. He frowned, wondering who would be wandering here. The canyon was beautiful, but it could also be dangerous. Loose stones, sudden cliffs, wild animals. It wasn't a place for a child to be alone. As he followed the path, a faint cry reached his ears. At first he thought it was a bird. Then he heard it again, clearer. This time a voice, thin and frightened, bouncing off the rocks. "Help, please." Luke froze. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from instinct. Someone was in trouble. He listened carefully. The voice came again, this time shaking, full of panic. Without wasting a second, he kicked his horse forward and steered toward the sound. The canyon narrowed, and the walls rose higher, turning the place into a long, echoing tunnel. As he moved deeper, the air grew cooler, and the cries grew sharper. The sound was definitely coming from a young girl. Luke dismounted, tied his horse, and moved on foot so he could climb more easily. He followed the voice until he reached a small gorge, hidden between tall rocks. There, beneath a steep overhang, he saw her. A young Apache girl, no older than 12 or 13, was trapped in a tight space between large stones. Dust covered her face, her clothes were torn at the knee, and her hair was tangled. Her eyes held a mix of fear and strength, but she was trembling and holding her foot as if it hurt. But worse than that, a wild cougar stood only a short distance away, crouched low, tail flicking, ready to pounce. The animal's ears were flat, and its yellow eyes were fixed on the girl. Luke felt the shock hit him. But he did not freeze. He had seen wild animals before, and he knew how fast danger could come. His hand moved to his rifle, not to harm the animal, but to scare it away. He lifted it carefully, aimed at the rock near the cougar, and fired a loud warning shot. The blast echoed through the canyon like thunder. The cougar leaped back in surprise, hissed, and then sprinted away into the brush. Luke lowered his rifle and rushed toward the girl. She stared at him with wide eyes, breathing hard, her small hands shaking. When he reached her, he spoke softly so she wouldn't panic. "You're safe now. I'm here to help." She didn't speak at first. She just looked at him as if she didn't know whether to trust him. Her dark eyes searched his face, studying him carefully. Then she whispered her name. Voice, quivering. "Noya." He smiled gently. "That's a strong name. I'm Luke." Her foot was stuck between two stones, so he crouched down and studied the gap. The rocks were sharp and heavy. He could not pull her out quickly, or he might hurt her. So he placed his hands under one stone and heaved with all his strength. The rock shifted slowly. Noya winced, but didn't cry. Luke then pulled the second stone away and freed her foot. She tried to stand, but her ankle was weak, and she leaned forward. Luke caught her so she wouldn't fall. She held onto his arm tightly, her breath unsteady. He could feel how frightened she had been, but she was brave too, trying not to show tears. "You're okay," he said softly. "Just lean on me." She nodded, still gripping him. She had not let go since he freed her foot, as if she believed danger might return the moment she released him. Luke didn't mind. He understood fear and how strong it could hold a person. He offered her water, and she drank quickly. Dust streaked down her cheeks as she wiped her face with the back of her hand. Luke gently dusted her shoulders so she could breathe easier. After a moment, she whispered something in her own language, then repeated in broken English. "Thank you. You saved me." Luke wanted to say it was nothing, but he knew that would sound careless. Saving a child's life was never nothing, so he simply nodded. "I'm glad I arrived in time." Noya pointed toward the east. "My village. Far, but I can walk." Luke looked at her injured ankle and shook his head. "You can't walk like this. I'll take you home." At first, she hesitated, unsure. But then, she gave a small nod. She trusted him now. He lifted her gently into his arms and carried her back toward his horse. She held onto his neck, still shaking lightly. He set her carefully on the saddle and climbed behind her so she wouldn't fall. As they rode, she remained close to him, sometimes glancing back to make sure he was still there. Luke spoke softly to keep her calm. He told her about the ranch, his missing horse, and how he heard her voice. She listened carefully to every word, as if she wanted to memorize the moment. When they finally reached the open desert beyond the canyon, she pointed ahead, giving directions in short sentences. Luke followed her guidance. The path led to a circle of tall trees that hid a small Apache village. Smoke rose from a few fires, and people moved about in quiet rhythm with their daily tasks. But when they saw the cowboy riding in with a young Apache girl in front of him, everything stopped. Men stood up, women gasped, and voices whispered all at once. Tala, a graceful woman with calm eyes and long dark hair, rushed out. When she saw Noya, she ran to the horse, her steps fast and full of fear. Luke lifted the girl down carefully and placed her into her mother's arms. Tala embraced Noya tightly, checking her face, her hands, her ankle. Relieved, tears touched her eyes. But while Tala held her daughter, Noya pointed at Luke and told the story, in quick words, how she was trapped, how the cougar came, how Luke appeared and saved her. She talked fast, her voice bursting with emotion. The villagers listened closely. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Others looked cautious. A cowboy helping an Apache child was not common in those days, and trust between their people was thin. An elder stepped forward and asked Luke many questions. What was he doing in the canyon? Why was he near their land? Did he mean any harm? Luke answered calmly and honestly. He wasn't looking for trouble. He had simply heard a child crying. His answers were steady, respectful, and clear. The questioner studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The tension eased a little. Then something happened that Luke did not expect. Noya reached for his hand and declared with great seriousness, "He saved my life. Twice, almost. He is my family now." The words fell into the air like a stone dropped into a still pond. Conversations stopped. Eyes widened. Tala looked at her daughter. Then, at Luke. Luke didn't know what the words meant in their culture, but he could feel they were important. He felt warmth spread in his chest, not pride, not expectation, just a strange, quiet feeling, like something beginning. Noya stayed beside him until Tala gently pulled her close again. The tribe, though cautious, slowly accepted Luke's presence. Tala invited him to stay for a simple meal, as a sign of respect. Luke felt unsure, but accepted. It felt wrong to leave so suddenly. As he sat among them, Noya stayed near his side, as if guarding him the way he had guarded her. Tala watched this silently, her eyes soft with gratitude. Luke had no idea that saving one girl in a canyon would open a path he never imagined. A path that would connect him to a family, a tribe, and a destiny he had never been looking for. But it had already begun. Luke never expected to return to the Apache village after that first visit. But the memory of Noya's frightened face and Tala's grateful eyes stayed with him long after he rode home that day. The desert felt unusually quiet around him, as if the land itself was thinking about what had happened. He kept replaying the moment Noya declared in front of the whole village that he was family now. He didn't know what those words meant in their tradition, but they stayed in his mind like a soft echo he couldn't forget. He found Star, his missing horse, grazing near the ranch that same evening. He was relieved she was safe, but even while leading her home, his thoughts kept drifting to the girl and her mother. He wondered if Noya's ankle still hurt and whether she could walk properly. He wondered if Tala was angry at him, thankful, or simply unsure of how to deal with him. The tribe already had enough struggles with ranchers. Luke did not want to be another problem for them. Days passed, and he returned to his usual ranch work, but something inside him felt unsettled. Every once in a while, he would glance toward the distant trees where the Apache village was hidden. Finally, after 4 days, he saddled his horse and decided to check on Noya. He carried a small basket with salve, bandages, and a few biscuits. Nothing fancy, but enough to show he cared. As he approached the village, 2 young Apache men stepped forward to meet him. They did not draw weapons, but their stance showed caution. Luke lifted one hand in greeting, calm and respectful. The older of the 2 nodded and led him inside. It was a quiet afternoon. Only the sound of grinding stones and soft voices filled the air. When Noya saw Luke, she ran toward him with a bright smile that erased all tension. She stopped in front of him, hands on her hips, acting far more confident than her age. "You came back," she said proudly, as if she had expected nothing less. Luke laughed softly. "Of course I did. I came to see how your ankle is doing." Noya lifted her foot high and wiggled it. "It is better. Look, I can walk. I can run." She ran a small circle to prove it. Luke winced, afraid she might injure herself again. But she stopped safely and grinned at him. Tala approached with a calm grace, her expression soft. "She has been waiting for you," she said quietly. "She talked about you every day." Luke dipped his head respectfully. "I brought some things that might help her heal." She accepted the basket with both hands, a gesture that showed respect in her culture. They invited him to sit under the shade of a willow-like tree where cool wind moved through the leaves. Noya sat between them, as if she enjoyed being the bridge connecting their 2 worlds. She asked Luke endless questions about his ranch, how many horses he had, what kind of saddle he used, and whether he could teach her to ride someday. Tala listened quietly, but with interest. Luke found himself noticing her more. She was tall and strong, with striking eyes that reflected calm and depth. She spoke only when needed, yet her words always carried weight. After some time, one of the elders approached and asked Luke to join them at the central fire. Luke followed respectfully, unsure what was expected. The elder studied him with a thoughtful look. "You helped our child," he said. "And you came back. Many men would not return. You helped our child. Of ride. You helped our child. You helped our child. You helped our child. You helped our child." Luke shook his head. "She was hurt. I wanted to be sure she was well." The elder nodded. "Our tribe watches actions more than words. Your actions show good spirit." Noya ran forward and took Luke's hand again, standing beside him proudly. "See?" she said to the elder. "He is good." Luke gently squeezed her hand, touched by her trust. The elder smiled at the girl. Yes, Noya. He is good. Luke stayed in the village a little longer that day than he planned. Tala brought him a bowl of warm corn stew, and though he tried to refuse at first, she insisted gently. Noya kept giving Luke little gifts, smooth stones, feathers, small drawings she made with charcoal. Luke felt himself relaxing around them, as if the village had opened its gate, not only to him, but also to the parts of him he rarely shared with others. Before Luke left that evening, Tala walked with him to the edge of the village. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange and pink. You showed great kindness today, she said. I didn't do anything special, Luke replied. Tala looked at him with calm seriousness. To us, you did. Then Noya suddenly ran forward, grabbed Luke's arm, and whispered, Come again tomorrow. Luke chuckled. You're very demanding. She crossed her arms. No, just, sure. He rode home, smiling for the first time in days. The next day, Luke returned again. Sometimes Luke brought small things, an apple, a handful of berries, a small carving he made from wood. Sometimes he brought nothing at all, just himself, which seemed to make Noya even happier. Over time, the tribe grew more comfortable around him. Some greeted him with nods, some with small smiles. The children of the village began following him everywhere, asking to see his lasso, his hat, his saddle. Luke would laugh softly and show them simple tricks, always careful to be respectful. Tala often watched from a distance, always busy with tasks, grinding corn, weaving baskets, preparing herbs. But Luke noticed she never let Noya too far from her sight. She was a careful mother, protective yet gentle. One afternoon, Tala called Luke to sit near her while she prepared herbs. Noya was at the river, with a group of other children. You come often, Tala began softly. Luke nodded. She worked quietly for a moment before speaking again. Peaceful. Yes. But it has not always been so. There have been times when cowboys did not treat us kindly. Done sign. Luke lowered his eyes, understanding her words. People on my side have made mistakes. I'm sorry if my visits bring any worry. Tala shook her head. No. You bring something different. Noya trusts you completely. That is not small. Luke's voice softened. She's a good kid. Strong. Brave. Tala smiled faintly. She thinks you are a hero. Luke rubbed the back of his neck shyly. I was just in the right place at the right time. No, Tala said, looking directly into his eyes. Some people could be in the right place and still choose not to help. Luke felt those words deeply. They were simple, but they carried meaning. The wind rustled the leaves above them, and for a few quiet seconds, they just sat together. Luke felt a strange sense of belonging, something he had not felt even among his own people. As the days passed, Luke's connection with Noya deepened even more. She followed him everywhere, asking questions, telling stories, sometimes even scolding him when he teased her. To her, Luke was someone she trusted completely, someone who made her feel safe. But Luke's connection with Tala grew quietly, slowly, like a seed taking root. It was not romantic or sudden. It was gentle, understanding, trust, forming between two people who came from two very different worlds. They began talking more, sharing thoughts about the land, the future, and their worries. Luke learned how wise she was, how strong her spirit was, and how deeply she cared for her people. One evening, Luke walked Noya back from the river. She was carrying a bundle of small flowers and humming to herself. The sky was turning dark, and the air felt cooler. Suddenly, Noya stopped walking and looked up at him with a serious expression. You saved me, she said softly. That means something. Luke smiled. It means I'm glad you're safe. No, she said firmly, shaking her head. It means you are my family now. I told the elders. And I told Mama. Luke froze for a moment. Family? That's a big word. Noya simply nodded. It is true. He wanted to explain that things didn't work like that in his world, but the quiet certainty in her voice stopped him. She wasn't claiming anything wrong or unusual. She was expressing a deep cultural belief that saving a life created a bond. When they returned to the village, Tala saw Luke's expression and knew instantly what had happened. Noya ran to join the other children, leaving Luke and Tala alone. She told you, Tala said gently. Luke nodded slowly. I'm not sure I understand what it means. Tala didn't rush to explain. She looked at him with soft eyes, the firelight reflecting in them. It does not mean what you fear. It simply means that our spirits believe you were meant to meet us, that your heart carries goodness that touched our family. Luke felt warmth in his chest, stronger than before. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet, Tala whispered. That night, as Luke rode home under the stars, he realized something important. He was no longer visiting the tribe out of duty or curiosity. He was visiting because he felt drawn to them, drawn to Noya's bright spirit and Tala's quiet strength. And something inside him whispered that his life was slowly changing, step by step, without him even trying. Luke did not plan to become a regular visitor in the Apache village, yet every day his horse seemed to turn naturally toward the tall trees. What started as simple concern for Noya's injured ankle grew into something deeper, something he could not explain with ordinary words. The village felt peaceful in a way the ranch never had. The sounds of grinding corn, soft laughter, and the rhythm of drums in the distance created a calm that settled inside him like warm sunlight. The people no longer looked at him with suspicion. They did not smile openly every time, but they no longer stepped back when he walked near. Little by little, he became part of their daily view, an unexpected guest who brought small gifts, helped carry water, checked fences, or fixed broken baskets with his knife. Luke didn't even notice how naturally he blended into their tasks. But it was Noya who tied him most strongly to the place. The young girl treated him like he had been her guardian since the day she was born. She called out to him the moment she saw him, grabbed his hand without hesitation, and dragged him from one corner of the village to another, as if she were giving him a grand tour every single time. To her, he was not just a cowboy, he was someone she trusted with all her heart. And Tala was slowly becoming someone Luke thought about even when he wasn't in the village. She spoke gently, but firmly, and her voice carried wisdom. When she listened, she made him feel like his words mattered. When she smiled softly, the worries around him seemed to fade. He could not explain why her presence calmed him so much. Perhaps it was her strength, perhaps her patience, or perhaps the simple way she cared for her daughter and her people. One warm afternoon, Luke arrived to find Noya sitting beside a small pile of stones, her arms crossed and her expression serious. She looked up. When he approached, "You are late," she announced. Luke raised his eyebrows. "Late for what?" "For being here," she replied, as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. Luke laughed. "I had to fix a broken fence before the cattle wandered off." Noya squinted at him. "You should fix fences faster." Tala, who was nearby, hid a smile behind her hand as she worked on weaving a small basket. "Noya," she said gently, "Luke has his own duties. He comes when he can." Noya sighed and stood up. "Fine." Then she brightened again. "Come. I want to show you something." She led Luke toward a small stream that ran behind the village. The water was clear, flowing gently over smooth rocks. The shade from the tall cottonwood trees made the air cool and pleasant. Noya bent down and picked up a handful of white pebbles. "These look like stars," she said proudly. Luke studied them with interest. "They're beautiful." "They are lucky stones," Noya explained seriously. "I will give you one. You saved me, so you should have luck too." She placed a smooth pebble in his hand. Luke felt strangely moved. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'll keep it." Noya crossed her arms again. "Good. Mama says when people share luck, their hearts stay connected." Luke felt the words settle deep inside him. He wondered if Tala had really said that, or if Noya had added her own meaning. Either way, it felt true. They sat by the water for a while, talking about simple things. Noya told stories of her childhood, of her father who had passed away when she was very young, and of how her mother taught her to be strong and brave. Luke listened carefully, gently encouraging her to share more when she paused. Later that afternoon, Tala joined them by the stream. She sat gracefully and washed a small cloth in the water. Luke felt the air around them grow softer, as if the three of them created a small circle of peace separate from the world. "I hear you helped old Hokan fix the broken shelter yesterday," she said to Luke. Luke nodded. "It wasn't much. Just a few loose poles." Tala looked at him with appreciation. "It meant a lot to him. He is old and cannot lift heavy things." Luke shrugged lightly. "If someone needs help, I help. It's simple." Tala studied him quietly for a moment. And Luke felt something shift in her gaze, something warmer, more thoughtful. It made his heart beat slower and deeper. "Not everyone thinks that way," she said softly. There was a long, comfortable silence. The wind moved through the leaves, creating a soothing whisper. Noya hummed a soft tune and played with the water. Luke felt as if he could sit there forever. As days passed, Luke and Tala found more moments to talk. Their conversations were calm and steady, flowing naturally like the stream. They talked about the land, the changing seasons, their people's struggles. Luke learned that Tala had lost her husband many years ago, and since then, she had raised Noya alone with quiet strength. She worked harder than most people he knew, yet she carried her responsibilities without complaint. Luke felt a growing respect for her, something deeper than admiration. Something he felt in his chest whenever she spoke. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, painting the sky with shades of red and gold, Tala sat near the fire, weaving a blanket for winter. Luke sat beside her, watching her hands move with practiced skill. "You are very patient," he said. Tala smiled softly. "Patience is a kind of strength." "I'm still learning that," Luke admitted. "You learn fast," she replied gently. Their eyes met briefly. It was a simple exchange, but something meaningful passed between them. A quiet understanding. A connection that did not need loud words. Noya returned at that moment, carrying a small bundle of fresh herbs. Tala nodded approvingly, and Noya sat beside Luke, leaning against his arm as if she belonged there. "Luke," she said with a soft but serious voice, "do you know why I said you're my family?" Luke looked down at her. "I think you felt safe with me." Noya shook her head. "No. It's more. When someone saves your life, their spirit joins with yours. It means they will be part of your story, and you will be part of theirs." Luke felt something tighten in his chest. Not in fear, just in deep emotion. He didn't know how to answer, so he simply placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I will always be here for you," he said. "That's a promise." Noya nodded. "Good." Mama said, "Your promise is strong." She said strong promises make strong families. Luke glanced at Tala, expecting her to look away. Instead, she met his gaze openly. Her eyes were warm, thoughtful, full of silent strength. Luke felt something shift inside him, a feeling he had never expected to find in an Apache village far from his ranch. As the evening turned to night, the village gathered for a small ceremony. Drums played softly, and people danced in slow, graceful steps. The firelight flickered on their faces, creating shapes of warmth and history. Luke stood on the side, unsure whether he should join. Noya tugged his arm. "Come, you can watch with us." She led him to sit beside Tala. The three of them sat together, close enough to feel the heat of the fire and the rhythm of the drums. Luke watched the dancers move with fluid steps, their shadows stretching across the ground. Tala leaned close and whispered, These dances tell stories. Stories of our people, our dreams, our hopes. Luke nodded, mesmerized. Tala's voice softened even more. Stories connect us. Just like moments do. Just like deeds do. Luke looked at her from the corner of his eye. She was not talking only about the dance. And he understood. Their stories were beginning to connect too. Later, as the night air grew cooler, Noya fell asleep against her mother's shoulder. Tala lifted the girl carefully and held her close. Luke stood beside her, and for a moment, it felt as if they were carrying the same responsibility, the same care. You should rest, Luke said softly. Tala nodded. And you should ride safely back. But as Luke mounted his horse, Noya woke briefly, rubbed her eyes, and whispered. Luke smiled. I won't. And he meant it. He rode through the quiet night, the stars above him bright and calm. He felt the warm pebble in his pocket, the lucky stone Noya gave him. He touched it gently. There, under the vast sky, he realized something simple, but powerful. He was no longer a visitor. He belonged to that place. He belonged to those two hearts, one young and full of innocence, one strong and full of quiet wisdom. And the bond between them was growing stronger every day. The morning sunlight broke over the horizon, painting the desert in soft gold and orange hues. Luke saddled his horse, Star, feeling a familiar sense of anticipation. Today, he had no particular task to complete on the ranch. His mind, as always, was drawn toward the Apache village, toward Noya and her mother, Tala. He rode across the dusty plains, the wind cool against his face, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and earth. He could see the distant trees of the village rising above the horizon, and his heart quickened with a mix of excitement and concern. As he approached, he noticed a small commotion near the riverbank. Smoke of concern seemed to hover in the air even before he reached the village. Children were gathering at the edges of the clearing, shouting and pointing. Something was wrong. Luke urged Star forward and could see Noya standing near the water, her arms raised as if calling for help. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she struggled to balance on the slippery, muddy slope leading down to the river. Without hesitation, Luke spurred Star toward her. The mud was thick, the riverbank treacherous, and each step was perilous. Noya had ventured too close to the river while gathering herbs for her mother. The recent rain had swelled the stream, making the current stronger and faster. One wrong step, and she could be swept away. Luke knew he had to act quickly. He leaped from his horse before reaching the bank, landing carefully on the soft earth. He ran as fast as he could, keeping his eyes on Noya. She slipped slightly, catching herself on a nearby rock. But the wet mud under her feet gave way. Luke lunged forward just in time, grabbing her arm with a firm grip. She screamed, startled, but relieved as he pulled her to solid ground. Noya clung to him, her chest heaving. You saved me again," she gasped, her words trembling with both fear and awe. Luke smiled, brushing the mud from her hair. "I told you. I'm always here for you," he said gently. "You have to be more careful near the river." I didn't mean to go too far," she whispered, still gripping him. She looked at him with wide eyes, trust shining in every glance. Luke felt a pang of protectiveness for the little girl who had become such a part of his heart. As they returned to the village together, the elders and other villagers had gathered by the central fire. Tala stood among them, her face a mix of worry and relief. When she saw Noya safe in Luke's arms, her expression softened and her eyes glistened with gratitude. "You came just in time," Tala said quietly as she took her daughter from Luke. "Thank you for being here." "Thank you." Luke shook his head. "I'm just doing what's right." But Noya wasn't done yet. She turned toward Luke, her small fists clenched with determination. Her voice rang clear across the crowd. "He saved my life twice. That means he is my husband now." A hush fell over the village. The elders exchanged glances, some surprised, some thoughtful. Tala held Noya closer, studying the girl carefully. Luke's heart skipped a beat, unsure how to respond. But the seriousness in Noya's eyes told him she wasn't speaking lightly or as a child playing a game. Tala spoke softly, yet her words carried authority and understanding. In our tradition, saving a life, especially more than once, creates a sacred bond. It is not forced marriage, but a deep connection that brings hearts together. It is a bond of trust, respect, and protection. Luke exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words sink in. He did not fully understand all the traditions, but he understood the intent. Saving a life was a commitment that went beyond simple gratitude. He felt a quiet sense of honor in the responsibility entrusted to him. "I will always protect your family," Luke said, his voice steady and sincere. Noya's eyes lit up, and she hugged his waist tightly. "I knew it. You will always be here, won't you?" Luke nodded, feeling a deep warmth inside. "I will." The elders nodded in approval, and the villagers began to return to their daily tasks. The moment had passed, but the bond had been sealed. Luke felt a strange peace, knowing he was now part of something larger than himself. Over the following weeks, Luke spent more time in the village. He helped with daily chores, repaired fences and shelters, carried water, and assisted with other small tasks. But more importantly, he spent time with Noya and Tala, learning the rhythms of their lives, the patterns of the land, and the unspoken rules of trust. Noya followed him everywhere, her bright energy infusing every moment with laughter and curiosity. She asked questions constantly about the ranch, his horses, his daily life, and even about the stars at night. Luke answered patiently, teaching her small lessons about the land, the animals, and the importance of caution and care. She listened intently, absorbing each word, and often repeated what she learned, eager to show her mother that she was learning from a wise guardian. Tala observed all this quietly. Luke noticed how she watched him, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with an almost imperceptible warmth in her eyes. Their conversations grew longer and deeper. They spoke about the land, about survival, about the dreams they carried for Noya and the village. Luke admired Tala's calm wisdom and her ability to see clearly even in difficult situations. One afternoon, as Luke helped repair a section of the village fence, Tala joined him. The sun was high, and the dust clung to their clothes. But they worked side by side. Tala handed him a piece of wood, and their hands brushed briefly. Luke felt a spark of connection he had not expected. He glanced at her, and she looked at him with a soft, knowing smile. "You are patient with her," Tala said, nodding toward Noya, who was practicing her archery under the watchful eyes of other children. Luke wiped sweat from his brow. "She is brave. She deserves patience." Tala's smile deepened. "And you are brave too. Not just in saving her, but in returning again and again. Most men would have gone on their way." Luke felt his chest tighten. "I wanted to make sure she was safe. That's all." Tala nodded, her gaze steady. Sometimes, the smallest acts carry the deepest meaning. As days turned into weeks, Luke's presence became a steady rhythm in the village. He was not just a visitor. He was part of their world. He shared in meals, learned about their customs, and even joined in small celebrations. Children ran to him with laughter. Elders greeted him with nods. And Tala's eyes often found his, filled with quiet appreciation. One evening, after a day of work, Luke walked Noya to the edge of the village. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, and the river glistened in the fading light. Noya carried a small bundle of wildflowers she had picked for her mother. She stopped suddenly and looked at Luke seriously. "Do you know why I said you are my family?" she asked. Luke paused. "I think you felt safe with me." Noya shook her head. It's more. You saved my life. That creates a bond. Mama said your spirit is now connected to ours. It means you are part of my story, and I am part of yours. Luke's heart swelled with emotion. He knelt slightly to meet her gaze. I promise to always protect you and your family, he said softly. Noya's face lit up. I knew it. That is why I am happy. She ran ahead to show the flowers to her mother, who nodded with approval. Later, as the village gathered for an evening fire, Luke sat beside Tala and Noya. The three of them shared warmth and quiet conversation. Luke felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. The bond between them was more than just gratitude or duty. It was trust, respect, and a promise. A promise that had begun with a simple act of courage and had grown into something lasting. The night was calm, and the stars stretched across the sky like silver lanterns. Luke looked at Noya and Tala, feeling grateful for the unexpected path his life had taken. Saving one child had brought him into a family, a culture, and a life richer than he had ever imagined, and he knew that no matter what the future held, the bond formed that day would remain unbroken. The village slept quietly, the fire burning low. Luke stayed near the edge, watching over them as the protector he had become. Noya slept soundly beside her mother, her small hand resting on Tala's arm. Luke adjusted his hat, letting the soft wind brush his face. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, how a simple act of bravery had created a connection, how trust and respect could bridge worlds, and how a single moment could change a life forever. And with that thought, Luke felt peace. He was no longer just a cowboy riding across the desert. He was part of a story, part of a family, part of a bond stronger than he had ever known. He had saved a life, and in return, he had found something far greater. A place where he belonged, hearts that trusted him, and a life filled with purpose and love.